GWATA TV gives you a first look at North Central Washington's business news. You'll hear from our local business, tech, and education companies as Jenny discusses hot topics and current events with some of the best innovators and pioneers in North Central Washington.
Hello, North Central Washington. Welcome to GWATA TV. I'm your host, Jenny Rojanasatian, and it's a pleasure to be with you here today. On today's episode of GWATA TV, we're going to get to the heart of what GWATA is about, technology. We're going to be talking with Martin Straub of SimplePowerIT on cybersecurity, and you'll learn some tips, tricks, and things to be aware of in terms of protecting yourself, your data, and your company. Cybersecurity is a continuing growing threat, not just locally and nationwide, but across the world. So we're going to talk about cyber criminals and what they're looking for in your data. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Martin Straub. Welcome back to GWATA TV. I'm on air today with Martin Straub of SimplePowerIT. Welcome to the TV show.
First time on here. Pleasure to be here.
We're so excited to have you on air, and we were talking offline. You've got a long background with GWATA and supporting our nonprofit, so I thank you for that support. Yeah. But first, let's introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay.
And who you are, what is SimplePowerIT, and what's your business?
Right. So I've been in the technology field for, I was preparing for this interview, counting the years, and it's been at least 25 years. Starting over in the Puget Sound area for like larger companies as big as AT&T, and even like then moving on to small wineries, always though in some sort of technology role. About 15 years ago, or a little longer than that, I moved over to Wenatchee. I was the technology director for Cordell Nair and Company, who some of the audience may know. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I started SimplePowerIT, because I really wanted to provide technology services to our local community. I just saw an opportunity and really wanted to sort of marry what I was good at with a need in the community.
Well, as you kind of alluded to with your background, big businesses, wineries, accounting firms, technology is needed in every single industry.
Yeah,
right?
So much so.
Right?
Yeah, there's some that we don't even think about, and we're like, oh my gosh, they're totally dependent on technology.
Yes, I recently went to an event and they said, which industry is a technology company? And they said all of them.
Yeah.
Like we all rely on that.
Yeah.
And then through your time at kind of Cordell Nair and growing in Wenatchee, you were the GWATA board president for many years.
I was. It was so exciting it was exciting and frustrating at the same time when I came to Wenatchee, because it felt like here was all these tech startups over in the Puget Sound area. At that time, this is in the early 2000s, and the tech sector was really just sort of fledgling here in the Wenatchee area. And I was like, I want to be involved in helping change that. Let's bring some technology vibe to the area. And so I got involved in GWATA and I was the president for a number of years in the mid 2000s. And that was it's really exciting. We were talking again off air beforehand how neat it is to see where the organization is now and this type of events that GWATA is able to sponsor and support. And it's a known entity in the community now, and there's so much going on in the technology sector just in our region. So it's really a pleasure to look and see where we're at now.
Well, all of that's because we have great foundations. So thank you for serving in our early years to grow this organization, and now we're on air providing content to the general public. So we're really excited about NCW Life because now we can get our word out even further and talk about things like cybersecurity.
Unfortunately, it is a necessary topic.
Right, it's a necessary. So, what does cybersecurity entail? Like, what are we talking about when we talk about cybersecurity?
Yeah, well, cybersecurity, it's almost a word that we didn't even have in our dictionary, or something that came in our vocabulary a number of years ago. It used to be that we would just talk about things like malware and viruses, and good, virus protection. But cybersecurity really encompasses a lot more than that. It's really a term for working smartly on your computer and working smartly on the internet to avoid the threats that are so common nowadays, so that you don't have your identity stolen, you don't have like a ransomware virus occur. All the different things that we really have to be aware of nowadays. because there are just so many different threats that didn't used to be out there. So cybersecurity is really this term that's evolved. That means, kind of protect your technology environment from all different angles, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
And which has become much more important now that everything is so connected, through the internet. Pretty much we don't do anything nowadays unless we're on the net.
And we're using the net everywhere, on our cell phones,
exactly,
on our personal devices, down at Mela when we're having a work meeting. So we're always online and using that data. So what do cybersecurity or cyber criminals look like? Who are cyber criminals?
Gosh,
what are they stealing?
Yeah, that's I don't know that
maybe not their physical description, but what is this group of criminals?
That's funny. When I first put together these presentations, I go, Google search cybersecurities, and you'd have the typical what we'd all imagine, the guy with the black hat on, a little fuzzier beard than this maybe, sitting in Russia someplace, furiously hacking away, and that's one image that we all have, and if that's what helps us motivates us to do things safer, great, use that image in your mind if you need a visual. But the reality is it's a whole industry. Unfortunately, there's a cybersecurity industry that's not only overseas in in Eastern Europe, but really even in spread across the world, really. And it's unfortunate, but there is a whole economy in making money by taking advantage of people and trying to harvest data. And so the criminals sometimes are people sitting, and hacking away from their own computers, but there's whole syndicates, and there's businesses built around it, and there's machines, not machines, but more automated systems that have been programmed by people that are the criminals, so to speak. So it's just amazing the black market that exists now in stolen data.
And who are they going after?
Whoever will give them the data. Okay. And so they used
mom and pop businesses.
Yeah, right. It used to be like, oh, I'm not a target. I just run this little retail business here in Wenatchee, down on Wenatchee Avenue, and I don't need to worry about things like that. Well, if we go back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where we're all connected on the internet, we really can't get any of our business done nowadays unless some portion of it's on the internet, whether it's because we process credit cards that way, or whether it's a larger business that actually has a web presence where they actually have their customers' data available on the internet. Everyone is doing something on the internet, which makes their data in some way exposed. The difference is a large company typically has more resources to actually defend themselves, whereas a small business doesn't think about it or just doesn't have the time or the money. And so we're all in different ways potential victims, unfortunately.
So when you're looking at cybersecurity and thinking about who should start learning about it, it's really everyone.
Right.
It's regardless if you have a business.
That's right. It's just it's even people who are just using their computers to do shopping online and using email. We all have potential to, unfortunately, unknowingly provide our data to a criminal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dive into some cybersecurity specific threats and some solutions for maybe being proactive with that. But first we have to take a commercial break. So come right back and we'll dig more into cybersecurity. And we're back on air with Martin Straub talking about cybersecurity. Our first segment kind of laid the foundation of cybersecurity is a real thing happening everywhere and in every industry. So now let's dive into some of the details, what are the techniques these hackers or cyber criminals are using in order to break into people's data?
Yeah, right. So it's interesting, the statistics actually say that over 90% of malware or lost data starts with what is called a phishing email.
Okay.
And I think the reason for that is it's just the power of numbers. All of us use email. All of us get tens or hundreds of emails a day. So if even just, have a success rate of less than 1% or a fraction of a percent,
that's still like millions.
Right, it's still millions of people
wow.
clicking on something or doing something, and so that's where that's where it usually starts. So for a business, the rule of thumb is if you do nothing else in your business other than educate your employees about how to have good awareness of what might be potential phishing emails. And phishing emails meaning an email that isn't legitimate, that is trying to trick you into doing something, click a link or take some action. If you do nothing else other than educate your employees, you're already 5 steps ahead.
Okay.
It doesn't matter how good your router is, yes, you want antivirus, but focusing on awareness and employee training, and particularly focusing on the email part is really the core of so much of being safe computing nowadays.
And you're right, we've kind of traditionally had this lens of like, what is the software I have on my computer to protect me?
Yeah.
But it's really education we need. We need to be informed so we make better decisions.
Right, and the thing is that everyone's like, oh, well, I should have just a good junk mail filter. Shouldn't I just keep that stuff out? And no, I mean, it just doesn't work that way, because it's just it's a cat and mouse game, and the cyber criminals understand that that's what's there, so they cleverly design their emails to work around those systems and encourage the end user to take some action on that email to really elicit a response on the email is what they're trying to do.
And I think we have some examples too that we can kind of walk us through. Like how does that phishing process happen?
It's almost always kind of a 2-step process where they're trying to get trust of the person receiving the email first. And a lot of times they'll gain that trust by making the email look like it's coming from either a service that you use already, like let's say you use Gmail for your email. Maybe it looks like it's coming from Gmail administration or Google administration. Or if you use Office 365, it looks like it's coming from Microsoft. Or a lot of us have gotten emails from another person that we know, but their email has been compromised. Okay. So the first step is a lot of times it's an email that looks somewhat familiar, the sender, and then the body of the message is trying to elicit some sort of action from you, typically clicking a link. Okay. And the link itself is a lot of times is harmless. But the example that we have up on the screen here is where you notice right away the subject is action required. So it tries to get your attention. And a lot of times it says something like, in this case, failed delivery notice, or your account's about to be closed, something to kind of get you concerned. Right. And then most often there's that link in there. And in this case, you can see the link says, I think it says review message. But the dead giveaway 95% of the time is you can hover over that link. And if you take a close look at the link, something is suspicious or unusual about the link. It doesn't really match up with the rest of the information. It's either that, or in this case, the from address also looks a little suspicious. And in both cases, in this example that we have up, both of them are giveaways that this is a phishing email.
Okay. So taking the time to double check the sender information, the link, before clicking out. And then let's say you've clicked out and then you're landing somewhere. What is the step 2?
Right. So what's really happening here, and what the criminal is trying to do is the email itself is harmless in itself. What they're really trying to do is get you to get to a web page where they can collect your username and password. So in this example, the link takes them to a page that looks like an Office 365 login page. And the reason they're targeting Office 365 isn't because it's inherently insecure. It's because millions of people use Office 365. So again, power of numbers. Right. So they give you this generic looking Office 365 login page. Everything about it looks like an Office 365 login page, except for the link up at the top is clearly not a Microsoft link or URL. But the rest looks really common. And so what happens in this scenario like this, if you got fooled, you would log in, give up your password, and then typically the next screen would just be like, page can't be found. But guess what? You just did.
Now you just gave them your information.
You just gave them your username and password, and they're off and running. And I've literally seen this happen with some of my clients before. Within seconds, their emails, now it's a live person. It's like a bell goes off in some back room someplace. Hey, we got one. And someone goes and logs into their email and is often sending a bunch of emails to all their trusted contacts, is harvesting their data, and now you've been compromised.
It's like that screen where you see just everything now just
right.
going
it
across.
Just goes across.
The band.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what can people, you talked about training and awareness within organizations. What are some other steps we can do to better secure our data and not be a victim of a phishing?
Right. Well, there's different specific techniques that, say, a business as opposed to a user can do, depending on the tools that you're using. But at the core of everything with cybersecurity is it really goes to having complex passwords. And as much as, and most of us hate to hear that because we're saying, oh my God, I have 100, 200, how many emails or passwords do we all have to keep track of?
And I am so tired of rewriting and then logging myself out because I did the wrong, right?
Right. So, and unfortunately, the answer still is what you've always heard, which is not only use a complex password, but the worst thing you can do is use the same password for different sites. Because once your information has been compromised on one site, what does the hacker do? Well, they say, well, I have someone's username and password now. Let me go see if I can use that at the bank, the common bank websites, the common credit card websites, all the other places that might store personal information. So to the extent that we are, as individuals, following the common techniques common things that most people do, which is use the same password, you've now just given the keys to more than just your email. You've given your keys to all sorts of different things. So the tip there is, of course, is to use, unfortunately, different passwords that are complex. And if that's challenging for you, there are some really great tools out there to help you keep track of passwords. And where all you have to do is manage one complex password, and
then it's locked.
It's locked down, right? Exactly. So that would be my advice that could apply universally to individuals and businesses. Complex passwords, and if you want some tool to help you with that, use a password manager.
Okay. And then what about Wi-Fi?
Well, Wi-Fi, we always want Wi-Fi, right? The first thing that we ask when we go book our Airbnb or we go into a coffee shop is, what's the Wi-Fi password?
Right. Absolutely.
Right. And every now and then we're like, oh man, this one's really convenient, doesn't have a password. Well, that would be an example of a public Wi-Fi, and I like to use the analogy that a public Wi-Fi is like shared utensils. Hopefully you wouldn't use shared utensils. In the same way, I don't really advise using public Wi-Fi for anything other than maybe browsing the web to get news. Once you're on a public Wi-Fi, there's really no saying who might also be attached to that public Wi-Fi, whether it's a criminal or someone just sort of casually looking for information. So to the extent you care about your personal information, I wouldn't recommend using public Wi-Fi for anything that's related to your own personal information. I wouldn't go to a bank website, do any of those things. I find the recommendation I usually give people is, sure, use a public Wi-Fi for things that are bandwidth intensive and aren't personal in nature. And then
you need directions somewhere, and you want to look up the menu at the place you're going to eat.
Right, you want to know what's going on in the news today, what's the latest political gossip, that sort of thing. But if you want to go do a transaction in your bank, try to maybe pull your phone out and use the Wi-Fi, turn your phone into a hotspot. Most of us have that functionality now. Wait until you get home, or use the app on your phone not connected to the Wi-Fi. Phones are actually pretty secure if they're just connected to the phone, to the cell phone company network. But public Wi-Fi is really not a place you want to be doing anything important.
And same thing with business travel. I've heard you mention too.
Yes.
So
hotels are notoriously insecure, often because we get confused as to whether the Wi-Fi is open or whether we just need the code to get on the Wi-Fi. You know how you walk into a hotel lobby and they say, here's the Wi-Fi
and they
code.
put it on your little room number.
And that all that is it gives you permission to use the Wi-Fi, but often the Wi-Fi at the hotel is actually wide open, so it's not even a secure connection. So I have the same advice for people when they're in a hotel: is anything important, trying to do it in a way other than using the hotel's Wi-Fi.
Right. And usually, if you're on business travel, you're looking at maybe your client's information or your business information, so you're putting yourself at exposure. So that's really good tips.
Right.
Martin, I could spend the next 30 minutes going through this because it's quite layered and complex, but as we kind of close out today's episode, you're a local business owner and you provide assistance to individuals and small businesses who need more resources, right, on these topics. So I want to encourage people to reach out to you if they need help at their business.
Yes, thank you. In fact, we've recently put together a whole cybersecurity assessment process that I have designed to be like a real practical assessment,
Okay.
not a super expensive one, but just a practical one for businesses, can fit a business of any size. And so if someone's looking for a little deeper dive into whether the security is something that we're happy to help them with.
Yeah, a kind of a test before it's actually a hacker, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To see, that's
Right.
a great description, because the idea is to see, do you have vulnerabilities?
Right.
And here's, what vulnerabilities are you willing to fix, and what are you okay living with?
Right. That
Yeah.
way, again, awareness.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on
My
air
pleasure.
with us. After this next commercial, we're going to wrap up. So join me in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of GWATA TV. If you missed part of the segment, make sure you go to the NCW Life News channel where you can watch the full episode and hear all of Martin Straub's tips for cybersecurity. Martin Straub is with SimplePowerIT, a great resource serving North Central Washington, as well as GWATA, your local technology alliance, who can refer you to a number of support resources if you have questions about cybersecurity. One additional tip I will leave you with as far as phishing emails and working with your team is to make sure that you share phishing emails internally as you receive them. So that way, if someone is looking to penetrate your business, all of your employees are aware that there's some suspicious emails coming through. It's just one way you can additionally communicate and reinforce the importance of cybersecurity when you're working day-to-day in the office. Well, that concludes our episode. Check out all of the resources on the NCW Life News channel or GWATA.org. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
Since 1999, GWATA has served as North Central Washington's Tech Alliance. As a 501c3, our mission is to bring people and technology resources together to create a thriving community. Through our work, we aim to inspire, engage, and connect.